Welcome back. Onward, forward. Here in this video, we will be covering historical accounts of some treatment concepts for parasites for historical and educational purposes only. I will never have and cannot give medical advice, so look to this strictly for educational purposes. All that being said, we are focusing on quite a few historical accounts and some of the changes in treatment practices throughout time of the past, and I have a few points on more modern day application of these treatments, or these what have been called in the past, when it was legal, cures. So we will start with absinthe. And absinthe is a French word. It is French for wormwood. And many will know from their Bible studies that the word wormwood is a term from Revelations. And it has to do with, the end of the world. A lot of people believe that wormwood is a meteor that will come and destroy humanity. All that aside, that concept may not be as unrelated to what we're discussing here today in the context of Toxoplasmosis gondii. And I do believe that absinthe or wormwood is used to eliminate the effects of the toxoplasmosis. So there are historical accounts of aspiring initiates, of failed neophytes who went through the initiatory practice and were told that they had passed the test. However, they were in fact being duped into believing that now there was a secret order who was going to depend on them for their future allegiance and fealty. So the initiate would be invited to a shot of absinthe ritualistically, and thereby congratulated at their future successes within the order, be that Masonic, Mithraic, Knights Templar, what have you. It was commonplace for them to be misled into believing that they were now in the club, and they would be given a shot of absinthe in congratulations, and then they would be used as a witless pawn and sent off on many missions, oftentimes throwaway or suicide missions, to serve the purpose of the secret order. However, they would be disavowed from any connection to the order. So essentially, nothing goes to waste. And even the aspiring initiates who do not pass, who do not meet the criteria through the initiation process, they are still used in certain side missions or lesser purposes. So you could call them a pawn, essentially. And I do believe that this is not in the writing, this is my interpretation. I believe what we see in that common story is that the Rh positives were throwaways. If their physiological response to the initiation process was such that their bloodline was determined not to be that of kings, then they were given a lesser communion, a lesser path. And if they were Rh negative, then they were kept in the club, and their influence and their family bloodline would be preserved and utilized for eugenic purposes in the future. So that shot of absinthe after an initiation ritual, for one, it was a sign that you didn't actually get into the club and that you were about to be sent off on a suicide mission, potentially. But secondarily, This is through separate sources. I have learned that absinthe is used as a treatment against gastrointestinal worms, roundworm, and parasites. So just keep that in mind as we go through this series of information. So I wrote down on here, it is a communion of the failed initiate. They would cheers, have a toast, send them on their way with, lesser objectives and to be used in the future and manipulated. I believe that often the initiation involved something very humiliating, and that humiliation would be used as blackmail leverage for shame in the future, and thereby fueling their kamikaze cause. But often in the past, absinthe has been vilified. They believe that it has hallucinogenic properties, and they think that it is the Thujon. I actually don't know how to say that word. Thujon is the component of absinthe that produces the hallucinogenic properties. But one thing I find really profound about absinthe is that there is a common practice of a bit of an alchemical process where a sugar cube is held in a special receptacle at the top of the glass as the absinthe is poured into the cup. And that sugar cube makes it sweeter for taste. Then there is water poured in, added, purified water is added, and that generates a alchemical process where the absinthe is lushed, where the oils are released, and the absinthe will change color before it is ready to drink. So it's not the kind of thing you just take straight out of the bottle. There is quite a bit of ritual involved in the drinking of absinthe. In various circles, that ritual is more sacred than in others. So many people believed in its heyday that absinthe was the source of the green muse or the green fairy. You can look into that. Many writers lament the effects of the green muse or the green fairy and it opening their consciousness, generating many hallucinations and beautiful writings. I believe it was Hemingway who had something of a poem written in homage to absinthe. Quite beautiful, that little some of the poems and some of the writing. But here we see, this term, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And I believe Mary Poppins was singing about absinthe. That entire story took place in the age of absinthe's heyday. But the reason absinthe became illegal in, right around 1905, just before it became illegal, there were some scientists doing some research trying to prove that it was a destructive force, that it was something worse than alcoholism and not to be considered grouped in with your common spirits such as wine and alcohol, that it was something removed and that its effects were dangerous. And sure enough, just after that series of experiments had been published, we had a case called the Absinthe Murders. In 1905, Jean Lanfray apparently killed his wife and children, and the entirety of Europe simultaneously erupted in an anti-absinthe movement. And I am of the impression that that had much to do with suppressing a potential cure for toxoplasmosis. I think that the uprise of absinthe was actually potentially a curative movement and preventing people from the potential schizophrenia and the side effects of toxoplasmosis, and the suppression of it and the rendering of its use to be illegal I think that that very much opened up consciousness to potential parasitic infection. And luckily, they have released that ban, and absinthe is back in the world and perfectly legal under certain restrictions. So use that information as you will. Much to learn and much to research in that field. So I just wanted to point out, Pliny the Elder, he used absinthe as a treatment for gastrointestinal worms. And also the French army used absinthe to treat roundworm. So here we have some old historic cases where parasites, worms, are being cured by the use of absinthe. So moving forward in time, we will here discuss turpentine, which has its application still today against Lyme and Candida. However, when you look into this use of medicinal turpentine, you will see there are many contraindications, so please be wary. There have been cases of overdose in children. It has much to do with your age, your weight, and appropriate portions for different people. But I have seen online turpentine and castor oil used in combination for medicinal cures. So I want to mention that there is a well-known doctor who has been on the internet quite a bit lately, and he goes by the name Andy Kaufman, and he was working in a psych ward and had some schizophrenic patients, clientele, who he administered turpentine and had much success, to the extent that they were sent home quite shortly after the first few treatments, and their family called Andy Kaufman back and said, "This is a miracle. My loved one has returned to me." And they wanted to know, how did he do it? How did he have so much success? And it was his use of turpentine. But we all know that you cannot make claims that you cure anything. If you do that, you will be strung up and put to the modern day witch trials of the medical industrial complex, which prefers that you drink poisons and glyphosate and what have you. So again, no medical advice to be found here. Just a glimpse back at history and some wide and diverse treatments against Toxoplasmosis gondii and other parasitic infections. That's all I got to say about that, y'all. Happy researching.